Nike.
You are wearing them right now, or you know someone who is. The Nike swoosh is the most recognized logo in the world. $46 billion in revenue, 30,000 employees, endorsement deals with almost every superstar athlete alive. And here is what they don't tell you in the ads. Nike doesn't make a single shoe, not one. Every pair of Nikes you've ever owned was made by someone else, in a factory Nike doesn't own, by workers Nike doesn't employ, in countries where labor laws are optional. This is not a coincidence. This is the business model. And in the 1990s, it nearly destroyed everything Phil Knight built. But it didn't, because what happened next is darker than the scandal itself.
A man selling shoes from a car boot and the deal that changed everything.
Phil Knight was a middle-distance runner at the University of Oregon. His coach was Bill Bowerman, the man who once poured rubber into a waffle iron to see if it made better shoe soles. In 1962, Knight wrote a business school paper arguing that Japanese shoes, cheap, high quality, unknown in the West, could do to the American athletics market what Japanese cameras had done to German cameras. He was right. In 1964, Knight and Bowerman each put in $500 and founded Blue Ribbon Sports. Knight's method? Fill his car boot with Onitsuka tiger shoes imported from Japan, drive to athletics meets, and sell them from a folding table. First year revenue? $8,000. Expenses? $8,001. They almost went bankrupt in year one.
By 1984, Nike was struggling. Revenue had flatlined. Reebok was eating their market share. Nike's board was panicking. A young executive named Rob Strasser had an idea: sign a rookie NBA player nobody had fully bet on yet, Michael Jordan. Jordan wanted to sign with Adidas. Nike was his third choice. He almost didn't take the meeting. Nike offered him $500,000 per year, his own shoe line, and a royalty on every Air Jordan sold. Jordan's agent, David Falk, negotiated hard. The original deal gave Jordan approximately 5% of royalties on Jordan brand revenue. Today, Jordan brand generates $7.3 billion per year. 5% of $7.3 billion is $365 million per year. For a man who retired from basketball in 2003, the $500,000 per year deal became the greatest business deal in sports history for Michael Jordan.
The Money Machine, selling dreams made by children.
Nike is not a shoe company. Nike is a marketing company that licenses its logo to factories in Asia who then make shoes for Nike at costs Nike sets. Nike doesn't own a single factory. It employs no factory workers directly. Its 30,000 official employees work in marketing, design, sales, and logistics. The shoes are made by contract factories in Vietnam, Indonesia, China, and Bangladesh. Nike designs the shoe, Nike sets the price. Nike sets the cost target the factory must hit. The factory figures out how to make it at that price. Nike doesn't want to know how. This structure gives Nike the highest margins in the industry and complete deniability when things go wrong.
In 1991, activist Jeff Bollinger published a report on Nike's Indonesian factories. Workers were paid 14 cents per hour, below Indonesia's already minimal wage. Overtime was forced, not voluntary. Workers who complained were fired or beaten. Bollinger documented a specific worker, Sadisha, who worked in a Nike-contracted factory and was paid so little she could not afford to eat 3 meals a day. Meanwhile, Nike's Just Do It campaign was telling American consumers to pursue their dreams. The slogan launched in 1988. By 1990, Nike had overtaken all competitors. The faster Nike grew, the more pressure on factories to cut costs. The more factories cut costs, the worse the conditions. The dream and the nightmare ran in parallel, and Nike made money from both.
In 1996, Life magazine published a photograph. A 12-year-old boy named Tariq sitting on a dirt floor in Sialkot, Pakistan, stitching a Nike football. The football would retail for $60 in the US. Tariq was paid approximately 60 cents to make it. The photograph ran on the magazine's cover. It became one of the most reprinted images of the 1990s. Nike's stock dropped. Celebrities returned endorsement products. Students at American universities launched campaigns to ban Nike from campus stores. And Phil Knight, Nike's billionaire founder, told the New York Times that he truthfully did not think that there has been a material impact on Nike sales from the human rights criticism. He blamed declining sales on the Asian financial crisis and consumer preference shifting to hiking shoes, not the child stitching footballs. The secrets behind the swoosh.
In 2013, the Tazreen Fashions factory in Bangladesh caught fire. 112 workers died, unable to escape through locked emergency exits. The factory produced goods for Walmart, Sears, and Nike subsidiary. In 2012, the Ali Enterprises factory in Karachi, Pakistan, which held a certification as an ethical supplier, burned down with workers locked inside. 289 people died. It was the deadliest factory fire in Pakistan's history. Nike was not directly implicated in either fire, but Nike's business model, outsourcing to contractors who subcontract to other factories Nike has never audited, meant that Nike products were being made in buildings that Nike's compliance team had never visited. Nike's ethical auditing program, launched in 1998 after the child labor scandal, was designed to audit Nike's Tier 1 suppliers, not their subcontractors, not the factory 3 steps down the supply chain where the actual work happens at 3 a.m.
In a mostly unrelated U.S. tax court case, court papers filed by Nike briefly revealed that in 2010, 2011, and 2012 alone, Nike had routed $3.86 billion in profits through a subsidiary in Bermuda. Bermuda has no corporate income tax. The profits from Nike's intellectual property, the swoosh, the Jordan brand, the Just Do It slogan, were transferred from Nike's European operations to a Bermuda holding company, which paid essentially zero tax on them. When the arrangement was due to expire in 2014, Nike moved the intellectual property again to a Dutch limited partnership called Nike Innovate CV, which qualified for a special tax ruling from the Netherlands. The structure was so complex that it was only discovered because of an unrelated lawsuit. Nike paid billions less in tax than any standard reading of the law would suggest it owed.
In 2018, Nike signed Colin Kaepernick, the NFL quarterback who had knelt during the national anthem to protest police brutality against Black Americans and subsequently been blacklisted by the NFL as the face of Nike's Just Do It 30th anniversary campaign. The backlash was immediate. Americans burned their Nike shoes on social media. The hashtag Nike Boycott trended worldwide. Conservative commentators called for a permanent boycott. Nike stock dropped 3% in the 24 hours after the campaign launched. And then something happened that nobody in traditional marketing had predicted. Nike's online sales surged 31% in the 24 hours following the boycott announcement. The people burning shoes were people who had already bought the shoes. Nike's actual consumers, younger, more diverse, more progressive, bought more. The boycott was free advertising worth an estimated $163 million in earned media. Nike's market capitalization increased by $6 billion in the weeks after the campaign launched. The controversy was the campaign.
How Nike survived everything and built the most powerful sports brand on earth.
Nike's genius is not the shoe,
It is the story around the shoe. Michael Jordan never won a championship in his first Nike contract year. He almost lost the deal before it started. Nike paid the NBA's $5,000 per game fine for Jordan to wear the black and red Air Jordan 1s that violated the league's uniform rules. The banned shoes became the most talked about shoes in America overnight. Every game Jordan played in them was free advertising. Nike's marketing team had not just signed an athlete, they had created a mythology. In the 40 years since, Jordan Brand has paid Michael Jordan an estimated $2.35 billion, more than 25 times his career NBA salary. And every dollar Nike paid Jordan came back as 10. The $7 billion Jordan Brand generates more revenue than the entire GDP of some countries from a deal signed with a rookie in 1984 for $500,000 per year. By 2024, something was wrong with Nike. Revenue fell 10% to $46.3 billion, the worst performance since the 2008 financial crisis. The Jordan Brand, their strongest performer, fell 16% single year. Nike's response to COVID had created a massive inventory problem. Their decision to go direct to consumer and cut wholesale relationships with major retailers had backfired badly. CEO John Donahue, a tech executive with no background in sport or fashion, was removed. Elliott Hill, a 32-year Nike veteran, was brought back from retirement to save the company. Meanwhile, Adidas, New Balance, and On Running were taking market share for the first time in decades. The brand that had survived child labor scandals, factory fires, and a global boycott was being beaten by smaller, more agile competitors who simply made better running shoes. Phil Knight is worth $33.8 billion. He has given away over $2 billion in his lifetime, more than almost any individual in American history at his wealth level. He gave $100 million to create a new film school at the University of Oregon. He gave $300 million to Stanford Business School. He gave $500 million to the Knight Cancer Institute at Oregon Health and Science University, the largest gift in the institution's history. He wrote a memoir, Shoe Dog, that became one of the best-selling business books of the decade. He is celebrated as a visionary, an innovator, a philanthropist. He is also the man who told the New York Times in 1998 that the child labor scandal had no material impact on Nike's sales. Both of these are true. They coexist. That is how empires work. In 1998, after years of scandals, Phil Knight announced a full reform of Nike's labor practices. Minimum ages for workers, independent monitoring, public factory audits, no toxic chemicals. In 2015, Morgan Stanley named Nike the most sustainable apparel and footwear company in North America. Nike now publishes an annual sustainability report listing every contracted factory. This is real progress. But consider, Nike's reforms came directly after U.S. Congress threatened legislation, after celebrities publicly returned Nike products, after university campuses banned Nike from stores, after the Life magazine photograph of Tariq. Reform, when it came, was not moral leadership, it was survival. The company that made billions from cheap labor reformed its supply chain when the cost of not reforming exceeded the cost of reforming. That is not a criticism. That is how capitalism works. Nike just happened to make it unusually visible. The verdict: the most honest, dishonest company in the world. Michael Jordan earns $280 to $365 million per year from Nike. He attends photo shoots. He approves designs. He plays golf. The workers who stitch the shoes bearing his name earn an average of $2.50 to $3.50 per day in Vietnam and Indonesia. To earn what Jordan earns in a single year, a Vietnamese Nike factory worker would need to work for 220,000 years. This is not a Nike-specific problem. It is the defining arithmetic of global capitalism. But Nike, more than any other brand, built its entire identity around human excellence, inspiration, and the belief that anyone can achieve anything. Just do it. The workers who make the shoes cannot just do it. They cannot just leave. They cannot just demand more. They cannot just be Michael Jordan. Nike's genius is selling the dream to people who will never live it, using products made by people who will never afford them.
Phil Knight built the most valuable sports brand in human history by understanding one thing. People don't buy shoes. They buy identity. They buy the feeling of being Michael Jordan for 30 seconds as they run across a parking lot. They buy the idea that they too can just do it. And to deliver that feeling at scale, at profit, to every corner of the world, Nike found the cheapest possible way to make the physical object that carries the dream. That meant factories in Indonesia. That meant 14 cents an hour. That meant a 12-year-old boy named Tariq in Pakistan, who will never own the football he stitched. That meant Michael Jordan earning $365 million a year from a brand those factory workers made possible. Nike didn't create inequality, but Nike sold the most expensive possible dream using the cheapest possible labor and called it inspiration. The swoosh is everywhere. So is the shadow underneath it. They have always traveled together. Just do it.
Nike.